The Great Pyramid of Giza. For 4,500 years, it's just stood there, basically as one of history's greatest engineering puzzles. How did an ancient civilization, with none of our modern tech, build something so huge, so incredibly precise, that it's still here thousands of years later? So let's get into it and unpack the absolute genius behind how they built this thing.
Okay, so to try and figure out its secrets, researchers sent a tiny robotic camera deep inside the pyramid. It crawls up this super narrow shaft until, bam, it's blocked by a stone slab, a door that hasn't been opened in 4,500 years. Convinced there was something big hidden behind it, they actually fitted the robot with a drill, punched a tiny hole through the stone, and poked the camera through. What it saw? Well, no human had seen it since the time of the pharaohs. But before we get to what was in there, you have to understand the ridiculous scale of this project.
The total weight of the Great Pyramid is a staggering 6 million tons. Just try to wrap your head around that number. It's so big, it's almost meaningless.
So to put that into perspective for you, this one ancient structure weighs more than the tallest building in the modern world, the Burj Khalifa. Actually, you would need 12 Burj Khalifas to even equal the weight of the Great Pyramid. It's just incredible.
So this thing wasn't just heavy, it was basically a man-made mountain, and it was built with unbelievable precision. So what exactly were the builders dealing with here?
Let's just run through these numbers because they're kind of insane. It's 480 feet tall. The base covers 13 acres. You could fit 9 football fields inside of it. It's made of 2.3 million individual stones, and some of the heaviest single blocks weighed up to 50 tons. That's like the weight of 3 passenger buses, and they had to lift that without any modern machinery.
All right, so the very first challenge was maybe the most brilliant. Before they could even lay a single stone, the entire structure had to be perfectly lined up with north, south, east, and west. And just think about that for a second, right? No compass, no GPS, nothing. How did they get an alignment so perfect that it actually competes with modern construction standards? It's nuts.
Well, the answer wasn't on Earth. It was in the night sky. The architects used the polar stars. The stars that look like they're fixed in place, while everything else spins around them. By tracking these stars, they could find true north with almost zero error. It was such a simple but absolutely brilliant solution.
Okay, so now they know which way the pyramid should face. But next, they had to tackle another huge problem, creating a perfectly flat foundation across this huge area of solid rock.
If that base was off by even a tiny fraction of a degree, the whole 6 million ton structure would be unstable. So without any laser levels, how in the world could they get that kind of precision over an area the size of 9 football fields?
Well, experts think they used one of 2 really ingenious methods. The first one involved digging a grid of trenches across the whole site, filling them up with water, and then using the water's surface as a perfect natural level. Any rock sticking up above the waterline? Just chip it away. The other idea is they used a simple A-frame tool with a weight on a string and just painstakingly checked every single spot to make sure the entire 13-acre foundation was dead flat.
So, the site is aligned, it's leveled. Now comes the real brute force part of the job: quarrying, shaping, and moving 2.3 million blocks of stone. Today we just use diamond-tip saws, heavy machinery, no problem. But the ancient Egyptians had no steel. So how on earth did they manage to cut and perfectly shape millions of these limestone blocks?
The key was a little bit of ancient metallurgy. They knew that pure copper was way too soft for the job, so they created an alloy by adding arsenic to it. And this produced a much harder bronze, strong enough to chisel limestone when you just hammered it for hours and hours with wooden mallets. It was slow, back-breaking work, but it definitely got the job done.
And the logistics of just moving the stones were just staggering. The best limestone was cut in a place called Tura, 250 kilometers away. From there, huge teams of workers would load these multi-ton blocks onto boats. Then they were floated down the river to Giza, where a whole army of workers was needed just to unload a single stone and drag it to the building site.
But believe it or not, the biggest challenges were still ahead. They still had to lift these stones hundreds of feet into the air. And for the really important parts of the pyramid, they had to work with a material way tougher than limestone.
This is one of the most debated questions in all of archaeology. No cranes, no heavy machinery, just pure human power. How was that even possible? Well, the leading theories all come down to one thing: ramps. Huge, massive ramps. Some experts think there was a single long spiral ramp that just wrapped around the pyramid as it got taller. Others think they used a series of zigzagging ramps on one side.
But either way, everyone agrees on one thing. It took sheer, brute force manpower, with huge teams of workers pulling those stones up these enormous slopes.
But here's where the story gets really mind-bending. For the inner rooms, like the King's Chamber, they didn't use limestone. They used granite, one of the hardest stones on the planet. And get this, archaeologists believe they cut it with saws that had no teeth. Seriously.
How on earth is that possible? Well, the technique is called abrasive sawing, and it is pure genius. They take a toothless copper saw blade and drag it back and forth over the granite. But here's the trick. They would continuously pour an abrasive, like sand, into the cut. So it wasn't the copper saw blowing the cutting, it was the incredible friction from the sand being ground against the granite. This worked surprisingly well, but it could take months just to cut through one single block.
So, even with all these incredible solutions we've figured out, the Great Pyramid still holds on to its secrets. We've figured out a lot about how they did it, but definitely not everything.
We still debate its true purpose. Was it just a tomb, or was it something more? We still don't really know for sure how many workers it took to finish this gigantic task. And that robot camera we started with, we're still left wondering what secrets are waiting in that hidden chamber completely unseen by human eyes for 4,500 years.
You know, when it comes down to it, the pyramids are just this incredible testament to human potential. They show that with amazing planning, a really deep understanding of the natural world, and a truly monumental amount of teamwork, we can make the impossible possible. It really makes you wonder, what modern pyramids are we capable of building today?